Good morning. It's Tuesday, May 5th. Today, our objective is going to be able to solve a proportion. So yesterday we learned about proportions. Today, we're going to be able to apply that a little bit more. Let's do the bell ringer first. So the bell ringer says, do the following ratios form a proportion? Well, we saw yesterday the easiest way to figure this out is to check our cross products. So my first cross product, if I would go through and if I would multiply 12 by 13, I can see that that's going to give me an answer of 156. And then yesterday we saw that we would have to find that other cross product. If it's equal, the ratios form a proportion. If it's not equal, they do not. So let's check this one here. Let me clear this out. And now we want to do 4 times 36. And if I multiply 4 by 36, I'm close, but I have to get exactly 156, which I do not. So I can cross out that equal sign, and I can say that my answer for the bell ringer is no. These ratios do not form a proportion. And now we're ready for the lesson. So today's lesson is entitled Solving Proportions. So if we look, basically what we're going to go through and we're going to try and figure out is all of the problems that you're going to be given today are going to be proportions. But usually in proportions, yesterday we were seeing proportions have 4 numbers in them. Today, one of these numbers is going to be missing. One of these numbers is going to be unknown. And we're going to go through and we're going to see if we can try and find this. Now, one way you could go through and you could find this is you could use your knowledge of fractions. If you kind of think about it, right? If I would take 5, you would have to think about, okay, what would I have to multiply 5 by to get to 20? And that answer would be 4. So we know to scale up, I would have to multiply the top number by the exact same value. I'd also have to multiply that top number by 4 as well to get an answer of 12. So I could see that a 3 to 5 ratio is equal to a 12 to 20 ratio. But what I wanted to show you is I wanted to show you this new technique based off what we learned yesterday when we go through and we think about cross products and show you how you can solve proportions using cross products. So let's go through and let's try this again. We know the answer is 12, but let me just show you a different way to get it. We learned yesterday that if we do have 2 equivalent ratios, they form a proportion. And what was special about proportions is that their cross products are equal. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through and I'm going to form an equation based on these cross products. So if I would go through and find my first cross product, well, I know that 3 times 20, I know that that gives me 60. So I'm just going to write 60 down here. And now if I would go through and if I would find my other cross product, well, in this case, I'd have to multiply 5 by x. I don't know what the value of x is right now, so I'm actually just going to write it just down just like that. My cross product is 5 times x, so I can just write down 5 times x, or in other words, 5x. Now, based on my knowledge of ratios, I know that if I have a proportion, I know that these 2 cross products have to be equal. So I'm going to put an equal sign in between these. And basically now all I have to do is just focus right here. This is just a nice little easy one-step equation that I would have to solve. We learned this earlier in the year. If I want to get this x right here by itself, I know that all I would have to do is go through and just divide both sides by 5. Over here, my 5s would cancel off, and I would get an answer of 1x is equal to 60 divided by 5, which is equal to 12. So the missing number, just like we got before in a different way, is 12. So as we go through today's lesson, we're just going to go through and we're going to try and use this new technique of cross multiplication to find the missing number in a proportion. So let's go ahead and let's just look at a couple more. So again, in both of these examples, if you notice, there is a number missing in each of the proportions. Again, let's just try and do it this new way. Okay, so what I would have to do in this one, I'd find my first cross product. My first cross product, I'd have to multiply 2 times a. So I'm just going to write that up as 2a. Then I would have to go through and I'd have to find my other cross product, 5 times 34. So if I multiply 34 times 5, I can see that that's going to be equal to 170. And again, based off what we've learned, I know that if I have a proportion, I know these cross products have to be equal. So again, I'm just going to fill that equal sign in. And now it's just a matter of solving this one-step equation. I have to solve the equation 2a is equal to 170. I know to solve that equation, I would have to divide both sides of my equation by 2. Remember earlier in the year, we learned whatever I do to one side of an equation, I have to do the exact same thing to the other side. So now to get my answer, all I'd have to do is figure out what 170 divided by 2 is. And 170 divided by 2 gives me an answer of 85. So in this proportion up here above, my value for A is 85. Let's go through and do the same thing here for letter B. So let's go through and get our cross products. My first cross product is 3 times 7, which is 21. And when I go through and get my other cross product, well, that I can just write up as 2b. Again, cross products must be equal, so I'll put an equal sign in between these. And again, then if I wanted to go through and solve this equation, I need to get b by itself. So I would go through and divide both sides by 2. And when I go through and do that, I can get my answer. I know that in this case, 21 divided by 2, half of 21 is 10.5. So I can say that in my proportion up above, b is equal to 10.5 or 10 and a half. Now it's time to try a couple on your own. One way, just I didn't mention before, one way that you can go through and read a proportion is I can say that 35 hundredths to 3 is the same as C to 18. So that is the proper way to go through and to read proportions. Okay, any way to solve it, I know I have to find my cross products. So I know that one of my cross products is going to just be 3C. I know my other cross product is going to be obtained by multiplying 18 by 35 hundredths. 18 times 35 hundredths is 6 3/10. So in order to solve, I can go through and divide both sides by by 3, and get my final answer of 2 1/10. In number 2, you can try this one next. This one's multiple choice. So if I would go through here and if I would find my cross products, I can see my cross products. One of my cross products is 6 times D, and I can see my other cross product is 10 times 26, or in other words, 260. Divide both sides by 6. If you want to look in the calculator here really quick to go through and to do that, I can go through and do 260 divided by 6, and you can see that the answer there is going to be D is equal to 43.3 repeating, so choice C. And question number 3, same thing, find those cross products. In this case, my cross products are going to be 8 times X, and my other cross product would be 11 6/10 times 12, which gives me an answer of 139 2/10. I can divide both sides by 8, and when I do that, I would get my final answer of 17 4/10. So my value for X, in order to make these two ratios form a proportion, X would have to be 17 4/10. Number 4, this one looks a little bit different. It's saying that the ratio of 96 to 15 is the same as the ratio of 8 to what? What I would probably do is, this one looks a little weird, I would probably just write it what we're used to. I would just write a 96 to 15 ratio is equal to an 8 to blank ratio. I can just fill a variable in there. So I'll just put an X in there. And now I can just go through just like I've been doing before, and I can go through and I can find my cross products. So my first cross product would be 96X. My second cross product, 15 times 8, is 120. In order to figure out my answer, I would have to divide both sides of my equation by 96. So if I do 120 divided by 96, you can see I'm going to get an answer of 1 25 hundredths, or 1 1/4. Last one, another multiple choice one. So if I would go through and again find my cross products, okay, in this case, I would have to multiply my first cross product would be 8 times 26. 8 times 26 is 208. When I find my other cross product, 2 1/5 times X, I can just write up as 2 1/5 X. Now, I don't know about you, but I think I would rather write 1/5 as a decimal. If you just think 1/5 is equivalent to the fraction 2/10, and 2/10 I can just write as 2.2. So why don't I go ahead and do that? I'm going to write a new equation, 208 instead of 2 1/5. I'm going to put 2 2/10, 2.2x. And now in order to solve this one for X, I'd have to go through and divide both sides by 2.2. Again, I can do this. I can write this as a decimal because it's a terminating decimal. If it was a repeating decimal, to get the precise answer, I probably would have to stick it out with a fraction and work through it with a fraction. Anyway, if I pull up the calculator here really quick, and if we do 208 divided by 2 2/10, you can see that I'm going to get an answer of 94.54 repeating, and that was choice A. And that's it for today. You're all done.